I never thought my downfall would begin with something as ordinary as a Monday morning meeting. Back then, my life looked almost perfect from the outside. I had a well-paying corporate job at one of the most respected firms in New York, an apartment on the Upper West Side with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson, a boyfriend who always remembered to bring me coffee just the way I liked it, and a reputation for being sharp, dependable, and just ambitious enough to keep climbing without drawing too much fire. I wasn't the loudest voice in the boardroom, but I was the one people leaned on when things needed to get done, when numbers had to be untangled, when a deal needed a closer who wouldn't screw it up. I was good, maybe too good, and I thought that meant I was safe. That morning, I wore my favorite navy dress, the one that gave me shoulders like armor and made me feel invincible. The meeting was supposed to be about the upcoming merger with a European biotech company, a deal worth close to $80 million, the kind of thing that could cement someone's career for life. I had worked late for weeks pulling together research, strategy outlines, risk assessments. Half of it ghostwritten under the name of my boss, Carter Laine. Victoria was the kind of woman people in our office whispered about in the hallways but never dared cross. She was sharp, beautiful in a way that made people feel small around her, and ruthless to anyone she saw as competition. But I never thought she'd see me as competition. I thought I was her ally, her support system, the right hand she trusted. We'd even had drinks together sometimes, laughing about the ridiculous posturing of men on our executive team, clinking glasses like co-conspirators. She had leaned close once, her perfume expensive and sharp, and told me, "You're smarter than the rest of them. Stick with me, and I'll take you to the top." And I had believed her. So when she smiled across that polished mahogany table during the meeting, I smiled back, even though my stomach was tight with nerves. The board members nodded as she presented, clicking through slides that I had designed, explaining strategies that I had crafted. I kept my face neutral, professional, even as my chest burned with the desire to be recognized. But that's not how corporate life works. You do the work, someone else gets the credit, and if you're patient enough, maybe one day you're the one standing at the front, basking in borrowed glory. That's what I told myself anyway. After the meeting, I lingered, gathering my papers while most people filed out. Victoria touched my arm lightly and said, "Can you stay for a second?" I thought she might thank me in private, maybe even promise me a raise or at least a chance to present next time. But instead, she closed the door, leaned against the table, and with a smile that didn't reach her eyes said, "I think it's time we talk about your future here." The words froze me. My future. I swallowed and nodded, waiting. She exhaled like this was difficult for her, though her face stayed perfectly smooth. "You're talented, no doubt about it. But lately I've been concerned about your loyalty. The partners have noticed too. They feel you've been overstepping, trying to take ownership of projects that aren't yours." I opened my mouth, stunned, but she kept going. "It's not personal. But we can't afford that kind of disruption on my team. So, effective immediately, we're letting you go. HR will handle the details." The floor tilted beneath me. Fired. Just like that. After everything I'd done for her. My voice came out sharp, higher than I wanted. "You're saying I'm not loyal. I built that entire pitch for you. Every number, every word." Victoria's lips curved into something almost pitying. "And that's the problem. You don't understand the chain of command. You forgot your place. Forgot my place." The words sliced me open. I wanted to scream, to tear into her with the truth, but all I managed was a strangled, "This isn't fair." Her gaze hardened. "Life isn't fair. You'll land on your feet. Goodbye." And just like that, I was escorted out of the building where I had spent years building my career, clutching a cardboard box with my framed photo of my boyfriend, a few books, and the plant I had stubbornly kept alive despite the lack of sunlight. The humiliation was unbearable. Colleagues peeked from their cubicles as I walked by, their eyes darting away when I met them. Not one of them spoke. I went home in a fog, dropped the box on my kitchen counter, and sat in silence until the sun went down. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel, my boyfriend, asking how my day was, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. That night, when he finally came over, I blurted it out, expecting comfort, maybe even outrage on my behalf. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably, rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Babe, maybe it's for the best. You've been so stressed. Maybe now you can figure out what you really want." Something in me cracked. What I want? I wanted the career I built. I wanted the job I earned. She stole it from me, Daniel. But he didn't argue, didn't even hold me while I cried. And over the next few days, his distance grew clearer. His late nights became later. His excuses thinner. Until the night I found out the truth. The night I followed a gut feeling, went to the bar where he said he was meeting friends, and saw him there with her. With Victoria. They were tucked into a corner booth, laughing, leaning close. Her hand resting casually on his thigh like it had always belonged there. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just my career, my relationship, my life, everything I thought I could count on. I left before they could see me, but the image burned in my mind, searing itself into every waking moment after. That was my breaking point. That was the night the grief hardened into something sharper, colder. Revenge. I didn't want to just hurt her the way she'd hurt me. No, I wanted to destroy her. To make her choke on the same humiliation she'd fed me. To rip away the empire she'd built on my back. And I knew exactly where to start. She thought firing me had erased me, but she forgot one crucial detail. I had been the architect of that $80 million deal. I knew every clause, every loophole, every vulnerability. And I knew how to make it collapse. I spent the next few days in a haze, the kind where time moves strangely, like every hour is wrapped in cotton. My apartment was a mess, my phone buzzed with calls from recruiters I couldn't answer, and my bank account stared back at me with the cruel reminder that rent in Manhattan doesn't forgive the unemployed. But beneath the panic and shame was a pulse of something hot and steady. I kept replaying the moment I saw them together. Her manicured hand resting like a brand on his thigh. His stupid smile tilted toward her. And I swore to myself, with more conviction than I'd ever felt about anything, that they would both pay. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you freedom. Victoria thought I was gone, erased, irrelevant. Daniel didn't even bother pretending to care anymore. That meant neither of them saw me coming. I started with the deal. The merger with Arrogance Biotech wasn't just big, it was messy. Full of regulatory landmines, contractual traps, and cultural clashes that could implode if you tugged the wrong string. I had built the entire framework, so I knew where the cracks were hidden. I still had access to my personal notes, drafts, and the private email threads I'd forwarded to myself when I worked late from home. Every secret flaw was sitting in my laptop, waiting for me to weaponize it. But revenge isn't just about knowing where the cracks are. It's about timing, patience, and precision. I couldn't just blow the deal up in one fiery gesture. That would be too obvious, too quick. I wanted Victoria to feel it unravel piece by piece, to watch everything she had built slip through her fingers while she scrambled, powerless to stop it. The first move was easy. I reached out to a contact at Arrogance legal team, an associate I had once gotten drunk with at a networking conference. I knew exactly what clause would scare them most, an indemnity section buried deep in the risk disclosures. Over coffee, I dropped a casual comment about off-the-record concerns, with how Laine and company had structured it. His eyes sharpened, and I could practically see the paranoia sprout in his brain. By the time I left, he was already texting someone, probably flagging it to his boss. The ripple spread faster than I expected. Within a week, whispers about unforeseen liabilities reached the financial press. Victoria must have been livid. I pictured her in her glass office, barking into her phone, demanding answers from partners who suddenly looked less confident than they had during her triumphant presentation. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came from Daniel. For days, I debated whether to confront him, to scream in his face for betraying me with her of all people. But then I realized he wasn't worth my rage. He wasn't my equal. He was just a pawn, another weak man dazzled by power and shiny things. So I didn't scream. Smiled. I played sweet, apologetic, told him I missed him and wanted to talk. He bought it, of course. When he came over, I wore the red dress he always said made me look dangerous. I cooked dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and let him relax. He thought I was forgiving him. He thought he'd gotten away with it. That's what made it so easy to slip my hand over his, tilt my head and whisper, "So tell me what's she like at work?" Men like Daniel can't resist bragging. Within minutes, he was spilling everything. How Victoria had been bragging that the deal was as good as done. How she planned to take full credit at the shareholder meeting. How she had already positioned herself as the firm's golden child. He even mentioned a private folder on her laptop she guarded like a dragon hoards gold. The fool didn't realize he had just handed me the keys to her kingdom. When he finally fell asleep in my bed, reeking of wine and arrogance, I slipped his phone from the nightstand and sent myself every text and email thread he had with her. Nothing scandalous, but enough to prove their relationship had started before I was fired. Enough to raise eyebrows about conflicts of interest if it ever became public. I didn't need to use it yet, but I tucked it away like a dagger under my pillow. By the time the shareholder meeting rolled around, the deal was wobbling. The press had latched onto the whispers, regulators were sniffing around, and Arrogance board was suddenly demanding renegotiations. I walked into that meeting uninvited, unannounced, wearing a blazer that made me look like I belonged there. Nobody questioned me. I still had the face of someone who belonged in those rooms. I slipped into the back just as Victoria took the stage. Her voice cool and commanding as she reassured the shareholders that everything was under control. But I saw it, the faint tremor in her hand, the way her eyes flicked too quickly over the room, searching for signs of doubt. When questions opened, I rose. Heads turned. Her face paled just slightly when she saw me, but she covered it with a smile. "Do we have a question from the audience?" My voice carried, clear and sharp. "Yes. I'm curious how the firm plans to address the potential regulatory breach in Section 14.2 of the Origin contract, or the fact that several risk disclosures appear to have been omitted." A murmur rippled through the room. She stammered, "Not much but enough. Enough for people to notice. Enough for doubt to crack the polished surface of her power." I didn't wait for her answer. I turned and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. That was the first real shot in my war. And it was only the beginning. Walking out of that shareholder meeting, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Alive. The weight of humiliation and despair that had been crushing me since the day she fired me had cracked just a little, letting adrenaline rush in its place. For the first time I saw it clearly. Victoria wasn't untouchable. She was vulnerable. And I had the power to make her bleed. I didn't go home right away. I walked the city instead, down Fifth Avenue, past people carrying shopping bags and sipping lattes, all of them blissfully unaware that a war had just begun. My heels clicked against the pavement like a metronome for my racing thoughts. I kept replaying the look on her face, that flash of panic she tried to cover when I called her out. It was better than champagne. Better than sex. It was fuel. But I knew one public jab wasn't enough. She was too clever, too slippery. If I wanted to end her, I had to dismantle her from the inside out, and that meant finding leverage. Not just rumors or whispers. Something undeniable, something that would leave her no room to maneuver. That night, I opened Daniel's stolen texts again. He had no idea I'd forwarded them to myself. No clue that every "baby I miss you" and "don't worry we'll celebrate after the deal closes" was sitting neatly in a folder on my laptop. I stared at the messages, my teeth grinding. He had been mine. She had taken him. But now he was a liability she didn't even realize she had. I decided to weaponize him. Over the next week, I played the part of the forgiving ex. I invited him over, cooked for him, laughed at his jokes. It made me sick, but I kept reminding myself, pawns aren't supposed to know they're pawns. He opened up more each time, letting slip details about her late-night calls, about confidential memos she'd shared with him, about strategy documents he wasn't supposed to see. I coaxed him along with wine and soft smiles, feeding his ego until he practically begged to tell me things he shouldn't. By the end of the month, I had enough dirt to bury her 6 feet under. Confidential leaks. Insider information. Proof she had violated firm policy and possibly even SEC regulations by involving a lover in sensitive negotiations. All tucked neatly into a file I labeled with dark humor. Victoria's grave. The question was how to use it. I could have gone to the firm's board, but I didn't trust them. Too many of them had kissed her ring. Too many owed her favors. If I wanted to bring her down, I needed someone bigger. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to scorch the earth. So I made an anonymous drop to a journalist I knew at the Wall Street Journal. Someone who had once tried to get me to leak details about a different merger. Back then I'd been too afraid of losing my job. Now I had nothing to lose. The story hit like a grenade. Laine and Company. Under fire. Allegations of conflict of interest in Origin merger. The article didn't name me, but every line reeked of my fingerprints. It detailed suspicious leaks, raised questions about professional misconduct, and painted Victoria as reckless, compromised and greedy. Within hours, the firm was in damage control mode. By the next day, regulators were circling like sharks. And for the first time, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to watch her empire crumble into ash. But she didn't go quietly. 2 nights after the article dropped, my buzzer rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. It was her. Victoria. Standing outside my building, calm as if she'd been invited. I almost didn't let her in. But then a part of me, the reckless part that wanted to see her squirm, pressed the button. When I opened my apartment door, she walked in like she owned the place. Her heels clicked across my hardwood floors, her coat falling from her shoulders like a queen shedding armor. She turned to me with that same poised smile she'd worn the day she fired me. "Well," she said smoothly, "that was quite a stunt." I folded my arms, trying not to let her see my hands shake. "Don't know what you're talking about." Her laugh was low and sharp. "Please, don't insult me. No one else knew the deal like you did. No one else had motive. It was you." I didn't answer. Silence is sometimes more powerful than denial. She walked closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, jasmine and smoke. "You think you've won something, don't you? You think you've outsmarted me. But let me tell you something, darling. You've started a game you don't know how to finish." My pulse hammered, but I forced myself to hold her gaze. "Maybe. Or maybe you finally picked the wrong person to screw over." Her eyes glittered dangerously, but she only smiled. "You're clever. I'll give you that. But clever girls burn out fast. They let anger eat them alive. I'll still be standing when you're nothing but ash." She left without another word, the door clicking shut behind her. I stood frozen, my heart racing. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. After she left that night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling while her words replayed in my head like a poisonous loop. Clever girls burn out fast. She had meant it as a threat, a warning that she'd outlast me, that her power was permanent while mine was fleeting. But the truth was, I didn't feel burned out at all. I felt awake, sharper than I'd ever been. If anything, her little visit proved I had gotten under her skin. The great Victoria Laine had come down from her throne just to rattle me. That meant she was afraid. And fear was leverage. The next morning I put on a black turtleneck and jeans, my armor when I wanted to think like a strategist instead of a victim, and sat down at my laptop. I opened the folder I'd labeled Victoria's grave, and combed through everything again. The texts, the emails, the confidential files Daniel had so stupidly revealed. I wasn't just sitting on dirt anymore. I had enough evidence to prove she had violated insider trading laws, compromised client confidentiality, and misled shareholders. If I dropped it all at once, she'd go up in flames. But that would be too easy, too merciful. I wanted her to feel what I had felt, to be stripped slowly, piece by piece, of everything she thought made her untouchable. Her career, her reputation, her relationships. And only then, when she was standing in the wreckage, would I twist the knife. So I planned the next strike. Daniel was my weakest link, and I knew it. He wasn't loyal to me, and he sure as hell wasn't loyal to her. Men like him are only loyal to themselves, to whatever benefits them in the moment. That made him dangerous, but it also made him useful. I needed to control him before she realized what a liability he was. I invited him to dinner again, this time at a trendy rooftop spot in Midtown, the kind of place where the cocktails were served in glasses that looked like art. He showed up in his usual slightly wrinkled shirt, clearly trying to look more successful than he was. I smiled, leaned across the table, and let my hand brush his. "You know," I said softly, "I've been thinking. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe we could still figure us out." His eyes lit up with pathetic eagerness. "You mean it? After everything?" I tilted my head, feigning hesitation. "If you're honest with me. Completely honest. I need to know I can trust you." He nodded too quickly, eager to please. Over the next hour I coaxed more out of him. Details about Victoria's schedule, her private insecurities, even little things like how she hated flying and always demanded aisle seats. Every crumb felt like gold. By the time dessert came, I had what I wanted. Confirmation that she was preparing a personal project, something off the books that she hadn't even told the partners about yet. When I pressed, he grinned sheepishly and said, "I probably shouldn't say, but she's been talking to a venture capital firm about starting her own company. Thinks she can walk away from Laine and Company and build her own empire. Big money. Big risk. She hasn't told the board yet." My pulse quickened. This was it, the leverage I needed. If I exposed her secret project, it would look like betrayal to her own firm, a breach of loyalty that corporate boards despise. She'd be finished. I kissed Daniel that night, long enough to keep him hooked, long enough to make sure he thought we were on the verge of reconciliation. Then I sent him home and immediately started drafting an anonymous tip to the firm's managing partners. 2 days later, chaos erupted. Victoria walked into what she thought was a routine partner meeting and instead found herself ambushed with questions about her off-the-books venture. I wasn't there, but through a former colleague who still owed me favors, I heard the fallout. She had tried to deny it, then tried to spin it as a preliminary exploration, but the trust was already shattered. Laine and Company suspended her pending an internal review. The Queen had been knocked off her throne. I celebrated with a glass of wine on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt complete. But the truth was, I only felt hungrier. This wasn't enough. Not yet. That's when I made my mistake. Because in my hunger, I underestimated her. The very next morning I opened my laptop and froze. My inbox was flooded with emails. Angry, mocking, cruel. Anonymous addresses, but the message was clear. Someone had leaked private photos of me. Pictures I'd taken years ago, stupid, impulsive shots meant for Daniel when I thought he loved me. Now they were everywhere, posted on forums, sent to old colleagues, even forwarded to my mother. My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, bile rising in my throat. The captions were worse than the images. Fired slut. Pathetic ex. Corporate whore. And I knew exactly who had done it. Victoria had struck back. She couldn't touch me legally, not yet, but she had gone for the jugular. She wanted to humiliate me, to paint me as a joke, to strip away the dignity I had left. 4 hours, I sat frozen on my couch, shaking, hating myself for every choice that had led me here. But then something inside me hardened. She thought she could break me with shame. She thought she could make me crawl back into the shadows, humiliated and powerless. She didn't understand. Shame doesn't break you, transforms you. And if she wanted war, then war was exactly what she was going to get. I didn't cry anymore. The tears had burned out of me, leaving only fire. If Victoria wanted to drag me through the mud, then I would make sure she drowned in it first. I had one last card to play, and it was the deadliest one. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just embarrassing, it was criminal. Insider trading, breach of fiduciary duty, falsified disclosures. If I handed it all over to the SEC, her career wouldn't just end. She'd be investigated, disgraced, maybe even prosecuted. I had held back because part of me wanted to savor the smaller cuts, to let her suffer death by 1,000 humiliations. But she'd escalated, and now I had no reason to hold back. So I put everything together. Every document, every incriminating text, every whispered detail, and I sent it. Not anonymously this time. I signed my name. If she wanted to see me burn, I wanted her to know exactly who lit the match that set her empire ablaze. The fallout was immediate. The SEC opened a formal inquiry. Investors pulled back from the Origin deal. Laine and company issued a statement distancing themselves from her, calling her actions deeply concerning and in violation of firm policy. Within days, she was suspended permanently. Her face was plastered across the news, not as a rising star of corporate law, but as a cautionary tale, a fraud, a woman who had gambled everything and lost. I thought it would feel like victory. I thought I would stand in front of my mirror, toast myself with champagne, and feel whole again. But instead, all I felt was emptiness. The final blow came when Daniel showed up at my door, drunk, furious. He pounded until I opened, his face twisted with rage. "You ruined her," he spat, shoving me back with his words. "Do you know what you've done? She loved me. She trusted me. And you're poison." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "She loved you. She used you. Just like she used me. You were a toy, Daniel. A disposable little toy." His face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He staggered away, muttering curses, and I never saw him again. When the headlines finally died down, when the deal collapsed and Victoria disappeared from the public eye, I sat alone in my apartment, staring out at the city that had once felt like it belonged to me. I had won. I had destroyed her. I had taken everything she'd taken from me and set it on fire. But the silence afterward was unbearable. I kept waiting for the rush, for the peace, for the sense of justice served. Instead, there was only hollowness. Revenge had been my oxygen, the thing that kept me alive after she betrayed me, but now that it was over, I couldn't breathe. I realized, too late, that I hadn't just destroyed her. I destroyed myself. The woman I used to be, the ambitious, hopeful, driven version of me, was gone. In her place was someone colder, sharper, emptier. Sometimes I wonder if Victoria was right that night in my apartment, when she told me clever girls burn out fast. Maybe she knew all along that even if I won, I would lose myself in the process. Maybe she saw me more clearly than I ever wanted to admit. And yet, if I could go back, would I do anything differently? I think about that often. The truth is, I don't know. All I know is this: revenge doesn't heal. It doesn't fix what's broken. Doesn't give you back what you lost. It just leaves you standing alone in the ashes, wondering if burning it all down was worth the cost. And the worst part, a small dark part of me whispers yes.